All right, so I'm going to start with a quote from the late great sculptor Dwayne Mickelson, who was a mentor of mine and helped me solve a problem once when I was really stuck, which is cool because Dwayne didn't solve my problem, right? Dwayne helped me solve my problem. And so when I said thanks, he kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, well, sculpture is just creative problem solving, right? And I love that quote because it's true. And I know that it's true because I'm a sculptor, right? That's what I do now. So it's cool. It's my job to solve problems all day, right? So I get paid to go into a space and look at it and imagine it to be different somehow, right? Hopefully better, and then I make that change. So this wasn't always my job. I didn't always get to do this. I went to school for art education, and I had some really amazing teachers, right? Teachers who didn't just teach me how to make art, but teachers who taught me how to think creatively, right? How to use imaginative thought to solve problems. So when I became a teacher, that's what I tried to do, right? I tried to carry on that tradition. So, so along the way, I saw some amazing things, right? Crazy students. So it wasn't my goal to teach a kid how to be the next Van Gogh, right? Because Van Gogh's life sucked. So my goal was actually to try and teach kids how to use imaginative thought, creative thinking to solve their own problems, right? And so along the way, I had a lot of students make some really amazing art. And inevitably, I would end up with those students' parents coming to me and saying, "Oh, that's so cool! Little Susie made the neatest thing in your class, and I don't know where she gets it from because her mom and we don't have a single creative bone in our body." I know, of course you don't, right? Nobody does. There is no such thing as a creative bone, right? That you're magically born with or born without, right? Obviously, even my 7-year-old can tell you that's just simply not a thing, right? Because here's the thing, imagination, it's a muscle, right? It's a muscle just like every single other muscle. It grows and it shrinks depending on how much you use it. And you might be thinking, well, I don't have an imagination muscle, but you do, right? In fact, it's located, actually it doesn't matter where it's located, right? The important thing for you to know is that you absolutely have an imagination muscle. In fact, if you have the cognitive ability to form a sentence, you have an imagination muscle. And that's a good thing, too, because it's the most important muscle that we have, right? It's that muscle that separates humans from animals, right? And I know monkeys have opposable thumbs, and that's really cool and all, but at the end of the day, still monkeys, right? So it's humans' ability to imagine and invoke change that has allowed us to progress. So, and now you might be thinking, well, my imagination muscle is puny and shriveled, and I guess if you haven't really used it that much lately, it might actually be pretty weak. But that's okay. That's all right. Everybody's body is different, right? So, in fact, if I were to do 100 push-ups every single day, chances are good that my biceps are probably never going to look, like a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. But that's okay because they will get stronger, right? And so then, when it comes time to do the heavy lifting, I'll be ready for it, right? And we all, of course, know the opposite of that is true. If I do 0 push-ups a day, my biceps are probably going to begin to look like, honestly, they'll just look like they do right now. But that is also okay, right? Because later, if I decide to start using them again, they will grow, right? They'll get stronger. So they might get tired, they might get sore, but they will get stronger, right? And so I try to exercise my imagination muscle every single day. Right? I wake up, I go out into my office with cement floors and high ceilings, and I sit down at my desk, which may or may not be a little bit messier than the average desk. I clean a space and I draw. I draw and I draw and I draw. I just vomit as many ideas onto the page as I possibly can, right? And most of these ideas, they're throwaway sketches whose only purpose is to get me to the next idea. And as many of you know, right, it oftentimes takes 1,000 terrible ideas before we can come up with one good one. But I just work through them, and hopefully in the end, eventually I can come up with something I like, something I think can be useful, an idea that I can actually turn into a sculpture. So then the real problem solving begins, right? Because I have to take an idea on a flat piece of paper in a sketchbook and turn it into a 3-dimensional sculpture that exists in real life. So So I start with a maquette. You can think of this as a little 3D sketch or a model that I can hold in my hand, use that as a reference. And then comes actually the challenges of of actually making the sculpture, right? Fabricating the piece. This is my favorite part. It's the most fun. But and then once that's done, then come the logistics of actually transporting the piece and figuring out what heavy machinery and stuff do I need for installing the piece. It's all a million things, and then, but hopefully in the end, when all is said and done, there's something fun that I can be proud of, that can bring joy and inspiration to those who experience it, right, in their community. So now obviously none of my other artist friends are really too impressed by any of this, because obviously that's just what they do all day too. So, but then again, I would actually argue, isn't that like what you do, right? Isn't that what you do? When you have a problem, don't you just brainstorm the best ideas that you can come up with, pick the one you think is the most likely to work, and then take the steps to fix that, right? To achieve that goal. So, but every once in a while, however, I do come across somebody new who meets me and says, "Oh, a sculptor? Oh, that sounds cool. You must love your job." And I gotta tell them, well, to be honest, when you're 40 feet in the air, precariously balanced in a scaffolding, trying to lean over and weld in place something that only exists in your mind and maybe a sketchbook somewhere. Yeah, I love it, right? Yeah, so I mean, it's great. Every day I get to exercise my imagination muscle, and that's awesome, because it turns out that sometimes in my life I have challenges. So, and it's my ability to use that imagination muscle that actually allows me to find creative solutions to those problems, right? So, and if by some off chance there happens to be anybody here who also occasionally experiences challenges in their life, you might be asking yourself, well, how do I exercise my imagination muscle? And to that, I would say, well, it's the same as all muscles, right? You start small. You start with 5 pounds and you work your way up, right? So, and I would even tell you that art is one of the very easiest and most effective ways that you possibly can exercise that. You can think of art as the low-hanging fruit that you might as well just reach out and grab, right? And so to start with, I would say simply expose yourself to art, right? just surround yourself with it, right? Go to galleries, go to shows, go to museums, go to festivals, right? Buy art, bring it home, put it up in your living room, put it in your office, anywhere that you can possibly use creative problem solving, right? Cover your walls with it. Because art is it's a physical manifestation of an imaginative thought, right? I mean, good design is nothing more than a problem that somebody solved creatively, right? So go see some sculpture. Go to your local sculpture garden, right? Or your community rotating sculpture tour. If your community doesn't have that, well, clearly that is a problem that needs a creative solution, right? So, because if history has taught us anything, it's that art changes the world, right? I mean, it's people with these huge bulging imagination muscles that have brought us airplanes, right? They developed the automobile. They build bridges. They design a democracy, right? They find the cure, right? These are the people that change the world, that help humanity advance. And so, and so now, I mean, I think about Brunelleschi in the he designs the Duomo in Florence, right? And they finally finished building it in the 15th century, and people are blown away, right? Nobody's ever seen something, a dome this huge. Nobody ever imagined it could even be possible. People look up and they are inspired, right? Leonardo da Vinci looks up and he says, "I wish to work miracles," and then he totally does. Right? I mean, we have the whole entire Renaissance come out of there, right? And so, and for me, it happened to be Abduction of a Sabine Woman by Gian Bologna. I saw this piece and I was knocked out. Right? 4 hours I spent just in a daze trying to comprehend how something so amazing could even exist. I looked up and I said, "I wish to work miracles," right? And I'm only one person. Right? Who can count the number of lives that piece alone has changed over the last 435 years that's been drawing crowds to it? So, But at some point, it comes time, right? It's time to take it to the next step, right? It's time for you to do something creative, time to add some weight, right? And I can't really tell you exactly what the best way is to do that, right? Maybe you can do something with your hands. Maybe you need to draw a picture or write a poem, right? Maybe you need to sing a song or tell a story, right? I mean, what is it? Who can even guess what crazy idea you have might actually completely revolutionize the way that we live our lives, right? I mean, maybe you imagine silly, invisible animals, and you think it would be fun if your friends could see these animals, and you guys could go out together and play with them, or I mean, I don't know, maybe Pokemon isn't actually your thing, but what is your thing, right? You got to figure it out because you need your imagination muscle to be strong, right? You need it to be as strong as it can be because you got to solve some problems, right? I mean, how are you gonna meet that deadline that your teacher gave you, right? Or your boss? You know, how are you going to keep your client happy and stay under budget? Or how are you going to pay next month's bills? Right? How can you tell your son that you love him in a way that he understands and believes you, right? Or how are you going to keep your mom safe now that she's getting a little bit older and she needs some help, but she doesn't want it? You know, how are you going to afford your medication and save for your daughter's college? How are you going to reduce educational inequality, right? What are you going to do about climate change or cultural change? I mean, these are huge problems, right? That require some serious, heavy-duty creative lifting, right? Because ultimately, these problems are just way too important to simply not solve. Right? But if we've learned anything, it's that all of life is creative problem solving, right? But imagination, that's a muscle. So go use it. Thank you.